Toddlerhood is a very critical developmental period because the first 5 years of a child's life really sets the foundation for the rest of their lives, especially when it comes to brain development.
Welcome to the Healthy Screen Habits Podcast. I'm Hillary Wilkinson. Whether you're starting your parenting journey with a newborn or looking to connect with your teen on technology, let's learn some new healthy screen habits together. As humans, we are programmed to find large eyes, chubby cheeks, and playful behavior appealing. And this means truly that there is nothing cuter than a toddler. So this stage of development is also partnered with this, discovery of independence and testing of cause and effect. And both of these things can lead to elements of frustration for toddler and caregiver or parent. And technology can compound this by layering in an extra hurdle for this power struggle. So if any of this sounds familiar, I have great news. I have a toddler expert here today to talk about all things toddlers and tech. Welcome to Healthy Screen Habits, Devon Kuntzman.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here today.
Same. I love this stage of human development, and I feel like not enough people talk about those areas that are so hard. Devon, your specialty and focus is on this very, like we're talking about, this very specific age range. And what brought you to this focus? Why did you choose to focus on toddlers specifically?
I love that question because the reason I decided to focus on toddlers specifically is actually really, really personal for me because toddlerhood is oftentimes characterized as a period of time that parents just want to fast forward through, right? Society tells us it's going to be terrible. You're going to have a teenager on your hands. So that messaging right there really makes us just want to hit the fast forward button, glide over it, and hope there's something better on the other side. But we can't do that. And the truth of it is that toddlerhood is a very critical developmental period because the first 5 years of a child's life really sets the foundation for the rest of their lives, especially when it comes to brain development. So it's a very critical developmental period and, of course, very challenging at the same time because it's the first time that our sense of control is truly being challenged as a parent because the whole point of toddlerhood is for your little one to become their very own person, to develop a sense of self for the first time. So when I started transforming toddlerhood, I noticed that there is lots of people talking about pregnancy, infancy, and children in general, but no one was talking about toddlerhood when we know how challenging it is. So I started transforming toddlerhood with the mission to dispel the myth that toddlerhood is terrible and truly empower parents and caregivers to overcome the challenges while nurturing their little one's development and creating confidence in their parenting skills. Because toddlerhood, yes, it's challenging, but it's also a very magical time period, a time period full of firsts where you get to watch your child's first step, hear their first words, and really get to discover who they are as a person.
I love it. I love all of it. Thank you so much for being the voice for those littles who can't speak that for themselves. And so, because this is healthy screen habits, I have to ask, like, you've talked about like developmentally as kids are growing, but we have this new layer of challenge within the realm of toddlerhood and basically human lifespan of how we're all negotiating and navigating screen time. But what do you find the greatest challenge that parents of toddlers face around screen time?
Ooh, it's hard to narrow it down to just one because there are a lot of challenges, and I'm a toddler parent myself. I would say the biggest challenge I see is that it's really hard to set healthy limits around screen time because we're living in a world where everything is so dichotomous, where you're either in one camp or the other camp, and everyone is so divided. So it's either it's screens are fine, totally fine, just don't worry about it, or it's like, oh, toddlers should never have a screen. And then parents find themselves in this place where they don't know what the best thing to do is. And then if they give their toddler a screen, they feel judged, judge themselves, sometimes get shamed by others. And so it's really, really challenging. And then the added layer on top of that is it's hard to navigate our own phone use, especially in front of our children. And so that's just a whole added layer on top of it. Not only are we trying to figure out correct limits for our child's screen use at this age, but also modeling those habits ourselves with our screen time.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I do not have toddlers. We are well past toddlers in this house, but modeling my own screen behaviors is something that I continually have to just check in on and see, like, am I showing my relationship with technology the way I want to emulate it for my kids, you know? So
Absolutely. It can just,
I'm currently involved in this like 2 week challenge actually with another digital wellness person, and I'm finding myself really caught in the throes of, oh, there's some behaviors I'm really not appreciating about myself right now.
yeah, I just set
uh,
new limits for myself 2 days ago
hmm.
around my phone use because it's always evolving, right? It's something
Exactly.
always changing, always evolving. There's different seasons of the year and of life. And so I just think that not only are we trying to manage ourselves and our own screen time and what we're modeling to children, and especially in the toddler age, they're just watching our every move and learning from us because they're so reliant on us to get their needs met. So they're
Hmm.
just so attuned to what we're doing. And then at the same time, we've got to navigate the tech world for children as well.
Yeah, yeah. So I had an amazing opportunity to speak with Dr. John Hutton, who's the researcher who's done extensive work studying the effects of screen time overuse in the very young in regards to the thinning of white matter within the brain. I'll link that episode in these show notes if anybody else wants to go back and listen to that. But since you are the the expert of toddlerhood, I was wondering if you have any recommendations of organizations, or is there any research that you can recommend for listeners who want to know more about the effects of tech overuse and the very young?
Absolutely. I mean, there is a lot of research out there. So even when you just go to Google Scholar and you start typing in, screen time, toddlers, children, preschoolers, you start to get a lot of research comes up. And what we start to see around some of this research is that there are potential risks around consuming too much tech. And I think it might be supportive to also just maybe talk about, well, what is too much? Because there might be a parent or caregiver listening, be like, okay, well, like, how much is too much? How do you know? First of all, there's the guidelines written by the American Academy of Pediatrics that says no screen time under 18 months, ideally 2 years, unless it's video chatting, because video chatting, while it is screen time, there's research around that shows us that there can be some benefits for children engaging in video chatting with family members. And then from 2 to 5 years, an hour of screen time a day during the week, and sometimes a bit more on the weekends, up to 3 hours. But that's only part of the story. The other part of the story is looking at your child and
Mm,
the type of impact screens might be having on your child. And sometimes that's harder to notice because it's not always just like, okay, my child's having screen time or just had some screen time. Okay, now what's the impact? Let's watch for 30 minutes. Sometimes the impact is cumulative. So you might not notice the impact of screen time. But then after a few months, you might be like, wow, my child is just acting completely different than he was before. Maybe just bouncing off the walls more, having more meltdowns and power struggles, unable to think about other things besides screen time, always asking when the next show is, when the next show is, things like that. So it's so important to know, okay, yes, here are the guidelines that are based on the science, but also here's my specific unique child, and here's what I see in them and their needs, because we have research that shows that potential risk of overconsumption of screens can disrupt sleep and can
Hmm.
create more meltdowns and power struggles and can disrupt attention span. So there's a lot of things like this that might even impact or delay language development and decrease emotional well-being. So there's a lot of potential risk of overconsumption, but I hate to say just follow a blind like guideline. We also have to take into account who is our child as a unique individual.
Yeah, yeah. So when we come back, let's talk a little bit more about what parents can do if they want to reduce power struggles and tantrums around tech.
At what age should I give my child a smartphone? How much screen time should I allow each day? What are the best filters to use on my family's devices? Sound familiar? These questions and more are answered at the Healthy Screen Habits website. We've curated the best articles, books, videos, and many other resources to help you figure out how you want to use technology in your life. Click on the awareness section to learn about the issues and dangers surrounding screen use. Then click on the Tools page to download printables you can use with your family today, including the Healthy Screen Habits Family Technology Plan. Visit our website at www.healthyscreenhabits.org for the resources and tools you need to get started.
I'm speaking with Devon Kuntzman, founder of Transforming Toddlerhood, whose mission is to empower toddler parents to overcome behavioral challenges, nurture their child's development, and create confidence in their parenting skills. Sounds like the triple win there. Okay. This mission of empowerment, I think, really resonates with me because it's so aligned with our Healthy Screen Habits mission, which is to educate and empower families to create their own healthiest screen habits while maintaining tech as a tool, never a replacement for human connection. So I feel like a lot of what we do holds hands. I love the focus on education because I really do believe that education leads to empowerment. When you know your why, then you can stand firmly in your how. It's kind of this marriage of desire to outcome. So we often have struggles around technology with our kids because it's like we were talking about before the break. A lot of time, childhood by nature is continually changing. And oftentimes we don't have enough time to evaluate what's happening or something catches us unprepared. And I know that for my own self, it's like the kids are kind of waiting in the wings, just ready to ask, like for a show or YouTube or online game when they see you like distracted or in a state of stress. And then getting them off of tech can be equally challenging. So this is where, Devin, we need your guidance. How do you recommend we set limits to reduce these power struggles and tantrums around technology?
Absolutely. I mean, this is such a big question, and I kind of like to think of it in two parts. The first part, which is creating a plan, and then the second part is, okay, how do you execute the plan or what happens when it goes sideways? So, so the first part with creating a plan, I kind of think about this plan having four parts. So, the first is when. When will screens be used in our home? Right? So you have to decide, am I giving my child screen time on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, or is this something we just kind of use sporadically as a tool in certain moments? Something like, okay, if we're on a car ride over an hour, or we're traveling on an airplane, or we're at a restaurant for over an hour, something like this. So you have to kind of decide when. And when you have decided, when you want to communicate this to your child, so children have the expectations set for them, because we want to make it predictable. Even if you use screen time sporadically, it can still be predictable if you're using screen time in certain instances or circumstances. That part is predictable. But generally, we want to look at, okay, when we're creating the when, we generally want to have it be predictable versus reactive, because what we know from toddlers is that toddlers need predictability. Predictability creates a sense of safety. It also, when things are predictable, more often than not, it's going to happen in a certain way. There's going to be a lot less pushback. When things are unpredictable, that's where you're going to be getting lots of power struggles. So it's important to really decide, okay, when will my child have screen time? And another tip around the when is make sure it ends 1 to 2 hours before sleep, so it does not disrupt your child's sleep. Then the second part is where. So that means more so like, okay, what type of device is my child going to use? Are they going to use a TV, an iPad, or a phone? If I had to rank it, I would say TV is best. It's fixed to the wall, your child's far back from it, and you are in control of it. An iPad would probably be my second, or a tablet would be my second choice. Sitting on a table, not held in a child's lap. It's smaller, the child has to be closer to it. And then third, I would say phone, because when we're using a phone for screen time, then it makes it more likely that we're going to be reactive with screen time, because we can just whip it out of our pocket and give it to our child. So it's harder to stay consistent with the limits that you set when your child knows it could be available and when you know it could be available when the going gets tough. The third part I would say is the what. So have a list of approved shows. So I would recommend, if possible, previewing at least one episode of a show or series before letting your child watch that. So you know that this show meets your standards for what your child's going to be watching. And not all shows for children are created equally. Some are really made to draw your child in and make it hard for them to let go of it. And a lot of times there's an opportunity to think outside the box. So if you're going to show your child a show, perhaps it's a show about baby animals in the wild. Maybe it's a webcam that's watching like a bird's nest or like a watering hole of animals somewhere in Africa or something like that. You know, there's so many things out there that could kind of be outside the box than just thinking of like your typical show for kids. And then the fourth is connection. So create opportunities for co-viewing or have discussions about what your child watches, which basically means the research shows that if you co-view with the child, it's better for them. They get more from what happened. It's easier for them to transition away from the show. It helps them understand what they were watching and they get more out of it, or at least discuss with your child about what they watched. So that's what I have for creating a plan. Then, okay, what are we going to do if your child is watching a show and then they're like, but just one more, but just one more. My child in our house, my husband's French. And so my child speaks French as well. And he's always like, which means one. So first he says one in English, and then he does it in French, like thinking maybe maybe it'll change, you know, if he just says it in the other language. Anyways, it's funny.
Which kind of leads you to believe, what else am I being what else am
Right?
I being bilingual on that I'm not sure?
Right. Because he's just like, he puts his little finger up. I'm like, oh, you think this is going to change the outcome here? This is cute. But anyways, so what you want to do is really talk to your child beforehand. So you want to make it clear, okay, we're going to watch one show, or I've set this timer, and have it be a visual timer. And when it goes off, it's done. But we want to give them something concrete, not just say, oh, in 10 minutes and 5 minutes, because honestly, they don't know what that means, right? So there's going to be more pushbacks. It's going to feel very unpredictable. Then you pause the show or whatever they're watching 5 minutes before and say, okay, we're almost at the end. So now you're starting to pull your child back from like being engrossed in what they're watching back to the present moment. Mm-hmm. Then maybe in
So
that
you could
last
like
five.
set a timer for yourself to know
Yes.
like, oh, 5 minutes, I gotta go and like just pause the show and let them know when this wraps up. You're just kind of like
Yep.
reminding and reviewing the rules that are in place.
Yes, and it's already creating like the first interruption, so it's not so brutal
Mm-hmm.
whenever we're going to like have the big interruption of turning it off, right? So then from there, if you in that last 5 minutes are able to co-watch with your child, that can be a great time because now you're watching it with them. You could discuss what's happening while you're watching, which is anchoring them more in the present moment, which again is going to soften that transition. And then when it's over, oftentimes we can see if we can give our child a sense of control, right? Because toddlers are hardwired to look for a sense of control because they're trying to become their own person. So, in that process, they're exerting their will and they're looking to have a sense of power or control. But they can't control how much TV they're going to watch or how much screen time they're going to consume. But we can give them a sense of control of saying, do you want to turn it off or do you want me to? Something like that. Now, what happens when your toddler says no or just, starts flipping out, which don't be alarmed if you set a limit and your toddler gets upset because when you set a limit, you have three jobs and your child has three jobs. It's your job to set the limit, it's your child's job to test it. It's
Mm-hmm.
your job to follow through on the limit, and it's your child's job to have a reaction when they realize that limit is going to stick. And it's your job to support your child with their big feelings and emotions. And it's your child's job to accept the limit. That means you can't force your child to be happy or to feel a certain way when you set a limit. It's up to them to work through their emotions and accept it. It's up to you to support them in working through their emotions. So, what does this mean in practice? Well, what it means is that if your child's upset and having a hard time, you might say, I know it's really
Yeah.
hard to turn off Bluey. You
Mm-hmm.
really, really, really love Bluey. And then you stop. You
Mm-hmm.
pause, you let it sink in. Oftentimes, we're so quick because we want to just get through it and, have the emotions change because it's uncomfortable to sit with our child's negative, or uncomfortable emotions. And so, but what we really need to do here is pause because connection can work wonders in helping a child feel seen and heard and ultimately to influence them and create cooperation. But we've got to give it space. We've got to give our child space to feel connected to us. You
Love that you're validating those feelings. You're like, "Oh, this is really hard." Yeah,
Yes.
I can see this is really hard. And you're just mirroring for them. You don't have to understand the why, but you can say, "Oh, I can see you're so sad."
Yeah.
And don't make it about you. Don't make it about, "Oh, it makes me sad when you're sad." You you need to not get enmeshed in that.
Right. Yes, it's about really just being this neutral observer
Mhm.
to really observe and describe what's happening. You don't want to turn it off, validating your child. It's hard to turn it off. I know. And
And
just really hold the space. And I've seen magic happen in these moments where after 5 minutes, 6 minutes, something like that, of really holding the space, the child finally just goes, okay, and turns it off. But oftentimes that 5 minutes can feel like 50 minutes, and we don't actually wait enough time for the child to work through their emotions.
mm, mm, yeah, yeah. I can see also how that co-viewing, even for the last 5 minutes of this show, can also help you with this concept that we call bridging, which means bridging the time online to the time offline. So, say you are doing like you beautifully gave the idea of, a live webcam or something. Say we're watching the Mama Eagle, and you
Yes.
can say, "Oh, come on, baby eagles, we're going to go fly to, go set the table or whatever." And you can use that as a playful transition. But you wouldn't know what to use as that like spark of bridging unless you had been involved in that last 5 minutes. So, yeah.
Yes, there's so many gifts that last 5 minutes can really give you. We often think we're too busy, and sometimes we might not be able to, but when we're able to, there's a lot of gifts inside it because it helps us meet our child where they're at. And when we meet a child where they're at versus trying to drag them over to where we want to be, what I always like to say is that when we walk across the bridge, say I always like to envision you're on one side of like the stream, your child's on the other side, there's a bridge. And if we are standing on our side and like demanding they come over, we're going to get a lot of pushback. Or we might go to their side of the bridge and then feel like we're just like pulling them over the bridge. What they really need us to do is come over there, stop, be hand in hand with them and walk them over the bridge. And the way we do that is through connection, through validation, through playfulness, and co-viewing that last 5 minutes allows us to really meet them where they're at and mesh them ourselves in their world. So then we can carry that through and literally walk over that bridge to where we want our child to be, where we want them to go. And sometimes it's not going to work out so beautifully, right? Because if you're new to setting this limit, your child's going to test this limit several times.
But
So
like you
you might
said,
have,
that's their job.
yeah,
Like
it's their job.
yeah, yeah. No, I love that distinction of, yeah, it's your job to set the limit. It's their job to test it. They're not testing you. They're just making it. I mean, they're all about object permanence. Is it going to be the same in each situation? So yeah.
Yeah, and when it's a new limit, it's really, really hard for them to know. So know that there might be times where you have to say, I see you're having trouble turning it off. I'm going to turn it off this time. You can
Mm,
try next time. And
hmm.
that might just be it. And they might fall to pieces and might have a lot of tears. And you might say, then they might say, oh, no, I'm ready. So you might turn it back on and then let them push the button, whatever you think you need to do for your child in that moment. But knowing that the more predictable that this limit becomes, the less they're going to push back.
For
But if
sure.
your child continues to push back, this can be a signal that maybe your child needs to reduce or take a break from screen time. That could be one
Right.
of the signals.
Yeah, yeah, that's that evaluation component that you talked
Mhm.
about in the first part. So I feel like I have a unique opportunity to ask you about this. As an elementary educator, one of the things that all teachers encourage again and again is reading aloud to kids. And it is truly one of the most enriching things you can do as a parent. It's shown to build attention span, empathy, creates connection, as well as, enforce all those wonderful pre-reading skills, the basic book knowledge and vocabulary building. And all of that being said, there are apps that have picture books online that will do, I'm using air quotes, read alouds. And yes, they are reading the words aloud. There is a voice, but I think my bias is showing through. But I'm wondering, as the screen habit lady, my bias is showing. But what, as the toddler lady, what is your take on these types of apps?
Sure. I mean, and it's not only just my take. I think if we just look at the research overall, that what the research finds is that a device can't replace an adult, right?
Hmm.
And that children learn best from adults. We do know that. Can there be learning from devices in certain instances? Sure. But it's not as good and will never be like learning from an adult. So I personally haven't used one of these apps because I personally wouldn't use one of these apps in my family. So what I would say is that for families that want their child to be exposed to more books, but maybe, you know, already spent an hour reading and can't spend any more time reading, or you even spent 5 minutes reading and you can't spend any more time reading at that moment, then this is where podcasts, storytelling podcasts for kids can be great. Different audio players with that read books aloud can be great. And so I would focus more on the audio component. And then what's so great about this is your child's listening, but then they're likely also doing. So they might be maybe building something with some blocks or playing with a lovey or a baby doll or something like this while listening. So they're going to be further integrating what they're hearing as they're moving. And so that's that's what I would personally prefer. But in the end, I think the bottom line is a device can't replace an adult.
Yeah, yeah. So we have to take a short break, but when we come back, I'm going to ask Devon for her healthy screen habit. We love what we do, and we wouldn't be able to do it without the generous donations provided by our listeners and followers. We want to extend special thanks to the Doctors Petty for their unwavering support of the podcast and organization. If you'd like to make a difference and contribute to the education and empowerment of families building their healthiest screen habits, please go to healthyscreenhabits.org, find the Take Action tab, and scroll down and click the Donate button. 100% of your donation will be used to spread awareness and bring families the tools they need to develop healthy screen habits. I'm speaking with Devon Kuntzman, founder of Transforming Toddlerhood, a website that allows you to be the parent you envision. She does this by teaching positive, developmentally appropriate parenting tools that work with your child's development. Devon, on every episode of the Healthy Screen Habits podcast, I ask for a healthy screen habit. And this is going to be a tip or takeaway that listeners can put into practice in their own home. What's yours?
Well, my tip is evaluate shows to be sure they are developmentally appropriate for your child. So, by developmentally appropriate, what do I mean? Well, fast-paced shows overstimulate the reward pathways in the brain and can make screen time more addictive for your child. Whereas a slower pace with minimal screen transitions can create less arousal in the brain and be less stimulating and less addictive. So when you are looking to choose a show, an app, whatever for your child, what you want to look for is low stimulation with developmentally appropriate content, models positive behavior, models positive dialogue, and ideally pre-watched by an adult. So some characteristics of less stimulating shows are slow-paced, very few screen transitions, less intense colors, relaxing or soothing music, characters who talk instead of yell, and few to no sound effects.
I love that because so oftentimes when you're looking at recommendations for safe kid programming or desired kid programming, they talk about slow tech versus fast tech. And to know exactly what these characteristics of slow tech are, I thank you very much for outlining that. As always, you can find a complete transcript of this show, as well as a link to Transforming Toddlerhood and that link to the previous episode that I talked about with John Hutton. By visiting the show notes for this episode. You're going to do this by going to healthyscreenhabits.org, click the podcast button, and find this episode. Devon, thank you so much for being here today and working so hard to empower all parents during the toddlerhood years.
Thank you so much. It's really a pleasure.
For more information, you can find us on Instagram and Facebook at Healthy Screen Habits. Make sure to visit our website, healthyscreenhabits.org, where you can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts or via RSS, so you'll never miss an episode. It's free, it's fun, and you get a healthy new screen habit each week. While you're at it, if you found value in this show, we'd appreciate you giving us a quick rating. It really does help other people find us and spread the word of healthy screen habits. Or if you'd simply like to tell a friend, we'd love that too. I so appreciate you spending your time with me this week, and I look forward to learning more healthy habits together.